Now I'll introduce our guest speaker. So our guest speaker now is Jennifer Loeb from Promega. She's the Senior Global Commercialization Marketing Manager at Promega, which is a major biosciences corporation, and she'll talk a little bit about that. So go ahead, you can share your screen or however you would like to.
Thanks, Al. I appreciate the kind introduction. I am super to be here today with you all. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you participants, wherever you are in the world. I will go ahead and share my screen, but I'm really looking forward to having a great discussion today. I want to, oh boy, hang on a second here. I
Jenny, I think you muted yourself.
Hang on. Let me try again. Let's see if we can do this again here. So you guys able to see now and hear? Can you hear me now?
Yes, there's a bit of stuttering in your connection, but we can hear you.
Okay. Is that any better?
Sorry, you're cutting in and out. I'm not sure if there's something wrong with your connection or something. Or
Okay. Hang on. Let me try one more thing here today. Things seem to be working just fine a moment ago. How about that? Any better or no?
yeah, now we can hear you clearly.
Great. Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for dealing with my connection technology issues. It wouldn't be a presentation these days without one of those issues, clearly. But I'm excited to talk to you guys today about starting your professional journey, especially in this new and exciting field of synthetic biology, and just kind of giving you a little bit of insight into career options that are out there. And then most importantly, I'm going to take any questions that you have that you're trying to figure out and you don't know who to go to ask or where to find answers. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to share just a little bit more about Promega with you all so you know who the company is that I work for, a little bit about what I do. We'll talk about some career options that fit in for not only synthetic biologists, but anybody pursuing a STEM degree in general. I'll share the story of how I got to where I am. Then we'll talk a little bit about how we can get you to where you want to go in the future, share some resources and questions. But if you have questions along the way, type them into the chat, and I'm going to ask Alex if he wouldn't mind just stopping me along the way and sharing those questions, because I can't see the chat right now in this view, but I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
I'll do
So
that
let's
if I see
talk
it.
about Promega really quickly. Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So let's talk about Promega. So Promega Corporation was founded in 1978 by Bill Linton. Bill is still the CEO and the president of the company. We are a privately held company and we're headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin. We have about 1,800 employees across 16 different countries throughout the globe. And we sell well over 4,000 products for researchers who work in the life sciences, applied sciences, and forensic sciences. And we distribute products to well over 100 countries throughout the world. Just a quick little of the company and kind of how we're set up. You can see there's a yellowish little flag, and that's headquarters. That's in Madison, Wisconsin, in the United States. The green colored flags represent where we have manufacturing sites. So the majority of the products that we manufacture and make are made in Madison or at our chemistry facility in California. We also have two manufacturing facilities in the Power Instruments. The other is in China. And in China, the products that are made in China are only sold in China. Purple flags on this map represents where we have branch offices. Again, 16 different branches across the globe. And where you see the blue flags, that's where we work with distributors to get products into the hands of researchers anywhere we can. So we have
Sorry,
you
Jenny.
kind of imagine that with,
Sorry. I think there might be some
yep.
issue with your screen sharing because I think that your slide is frozen in the screen sharing on the first slide. So we
Boy.
don't see
Okay. What
the
about
map. We
now?
just see the title.
Okay. Hang on a second. What about now? Are you able to see the map now?
It says you've started screen sharing. We'll give it a sec to see if it loads, I guess.
Okay. Okay. The issue here.
Yeah, sorry. I don't think we're seeing it right now.
Okay. So here's what I'm just gonna go ahead and stop sharing since really this is not working, and we'll have a chat. If that's okay with everyone, I can send along my slides later for anybody who's interested, but we'll just kind of go ahead and have a little chat from there, and move on with the presentation. Does that sound okay? That's
Yeah,
all
that should
right.
be fine. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
So
We don't need the slides or
breadth
anything.
of
So.
product support. So we make well over 4,000 different products. We make products for genomics, whether that be DNA, RNA, RNAs, anything related to genomics.
Sorry, your audio is also cutting in and out. I'm not sure we're hearing everything that you're saying. Hello, Jenny, are you there?
Make okay. DNA, RNA, this can be nucleic acid purification, PCR, qPCR, topics that you've a ton last year.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Logging off and logging on seems like a good idea.
Okay, let's see if we can get this going again. I've on a different device. Alex, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, this is much clearer too. There isn't the cutting in and out.
Okay, great. So apologies everyone for connection and technology issues today. Unfortunately, on the tablet I'm currently using, I don't have my slides. But I will, what I'll do is I'll send them over to Alex as soon as this is over, and we can have them distributed to you guys. But just real quickly, who Promega is, we provide reagents and products to people globally who study genomics, proteomics, cells, whether that be individual organelles or components of cells, or pathways that are utilized and take place inside of a cell. Additionally, we serve the forensics market, so anything related to genetic identity, forensics, crime solving, paternity testing, things along those lines, we serve that market. Additionally, we have products for the applied markets, and this can also include things like wastewater testing, cosmetic testing, and food safety testing. And then finally, we have a clinical diagnostics market that the majority of the products we make are not actual clinical diagnostics that we put out in the market that you would utilize as a test. We supply components to other companies that make those types of tests and assays. So just real quick, what kind of career options do people have who are interested in synthetic biology or who are pursuing a STEM degree? And, you know, I oftentimes, when I give this talk globally, I'll ask the audience, and I typically hear three answers. And those answers are go into research. Absolutely, you can do that to become either a teacher or a professor. Absolutely. or go into the medical field and become a doctor, a nurse, or a pharmacist. Absolutely, you can definitely do those things. But there are a lot of other options out there where you need some sort of a STEM degree. You need that technical background, that technical knowledge and thought process and thinking process in order to execute and be very good at those positions. And some of those options that you may not have considered before are things like my role. I work in marketing, but I have degrees in biochemistry and biotechnology. As we'll discuss in a little bit, I spent the first 10 years of my career in R&D at the bench doing lab work and such. So you can move into different positions, but marketing is another option where if you're marketing products that are going into the hands of scientists and researchers, you need that technical background, that mindset in order to do so. So that's an option if you like analyzing things from a business perspective in addition to a technical perspective. There's sales. For anybody who likes to sell, enjoys engaging with people, really wants to be face-to-face with people and solving their problems. Sales is a great opportunity as well. Anybody who's interested in legal, there are legal opportunities, patent laws, licensing, technology evaluation, all kind of fall under that bucket of being in a legal realm and legal departments. There's also scientific writing. This can be writing articles. This can be writing white papers, copy. There's a lot of different things for anybody who really enjoys writing and maybe doesn't enjoy the lab work so much. That's an option as well. Big buzzword right now is data. This is something that there's lots and lots of data coming from science right now. There's a ton of ways to analyze that data. There's bioinformatics, there's just general data analysis. Anybody who's really into that type of stuff, there are tons of career options right now for anybody interested in that. Then there are technical support people, and these are people who help solve other researchers' problems, help plan experiments, help troubleshoot data. So there's a variety of different things out there that one can do. So if we use Promega just as a quick example, and I've worked for other life science tools and pharmaceutical and biotech companies, what I'm about to say is pretty overarching. You'll find minor differences and subtleties in between a lot of these companies globally, but for the most part, these are kind of the pretty consistent, in and out, reliable sort of career options you can find. But first, before I jump into that, what I want to say is all the options I'm going to talk about very quickly, you'll need either a bachelor's, master's, or a PhD. All of these positions hire at these levels. It's just a matter of what the company needs and the skill set desired that will determine if they need if a position is open that they're pursuing somebody with a bachelor's versus a master's or a PhD. So just keep that in mind. It's not always a requirement, like you'll sometimes hear these days, that you have to have a PhD to do X, Y, or Z. That's not necessarily the case. It just depends on the company and the timing of the positions. Additionally, this is something I want to share with you all because I get asked this a lot in these talks that I give, but also when I hire and work with interns. And there are kind of 3 skills that really will help people stand out from other candidates. And this, again, doesn't matter what company or institution you go to work for, what position you are in. These are kind of the skills that are really going to make someone successful, and they're going to make somebody stand out from someone else. And these are skills that are hard to teach, but they're really, really important. And these are, the first one is communication, oral and written communication. You have to communicate well with others. It's critically important on so many different levels these days. The other one is problem solving. You have to know how to solve a problem and not give up just because it's hard. You got to be resilient and diligent and keep working at it and really coming up with creative solutions, whether they're right or wrong, doesn't matter. Just trying to solve that problem is really what makes the difference. And then lastly is teamwork. you hardly ever find anybody who works alone. For the most part, everybody's always working in a team. So if nothing else, keep those 3 critical skill sets in mind, because that will separate you from somebody else. But if we think about what kind of career options exist within companies, if you want to stay at the bench, some of the titles that you might be interested in are in departments such as research and development or R&D. There's also groups such as scientific applications who tend to work on, like, for example, a company like mine where we produce products for a variety of uses. Some customers might call in and say, hey, have you ever tested this product with such and such a sample? And it may be a yay or a nay. If it's an A and we're interested in it, we'll have our applications team test it. We may have somebody call in and ask for, they want to use something in a different way. Have we ever thought about it, or do we know if it'll work? We don't know, but we're intrigued by it. So those guys will test it. So those are some of those at the bench positions. But then there are positions in what I'll call operations. And operations, I would say, spends part of their time at the bench and part of their time kind of more at the desk. And those consist of positions such as manufacturing, quality control, and quality assurance. So manufacturing, quality control, and quality assurance, yeah, these guys all spend time working in the lab, but they're always trying to find efficiencies. They're working on new projects to bring new products to market and learn how to make them, and take what R&D did and turn them into, how do we scale up? How do we get this out the door? How do we test it? How do we make sure we're, consistently producing a good product? So there's a lot of problem solving that goes into that. And they're always trying to improve how we make things, make it more efficient, use less waste, create less hazards, et cetera, et cetera. We also have positions in project management as well as planning on this operation side. And that's really to keep things going and keep things on track, because we hate back orders. You hate back orders. And so you got to know and make sure you have the right people, the right equipment, and the right reagents available at the right time to produce the next batch of material. Then we get into sort of the group where I'll call technical. And that's positions like myself, marketing, where I have a technical background, sales, technical support, legal, data analysis, scientific writing, scientific training as well, training whether it be customers or internal people about new products and new things that are coming out and developed. And then we have field people, such as sales, and we have field support staff who, at our company, they specifically work with large liquid handling robots. And those robots are programmed by our team. And that takes a very special skill set to do that. And we work with customers to program and get reagents to do whatever it is they need to do. And those guys work very hard to accomplish that. Then we have a team that does collaborations, and they try to build collaborations so we can help labs individually, and they can share interesting things back with us, and kind of a circular motion where we're all helping each other. So now I want to shift gears quickly and talk just about how I got to Promega. So I describe how I got to Promega as being a winding road. And the path that I was not straightforward. When I was in your shoes, if somebody had asked me what my career was going to look like, I would have said, okay, I'm going to get my degree in biochemistry. I'm going to go on and get my PhD. I'm going to become a professor. And then I'll eventually win the Nobel Prize because I found the cure for cancer in HIV. Well, obviously that isn't how my path turned out, but you know what? That's okay, because I'm where I'm supposed to be. And you may have that path, like I just described, that super ambitious path. Go for it. You know what? It might work for you. It might be the path for you. So just come up with an idea and a path and start on that journey, and take whatever turns and such come your way, because in the end, you'll end up where you're supposed to be. So I have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin, in the United States. I spent, after graduation, a number of years running 2 labs at the School of Pharmacy at the university. One was focused on GI immunology, and the other was focused on cardiovascular medicine. I was working for 2 PIs who were very early in their career. So I was doing a lot of stuff because we didn't have a lot of people in the lab. So I learned a ton of methods, a ton of techniques. It was just an awesome experience from a learning perspective and really getting my hands wet and into science and research and understanding that aspect of how it worked. But the guys decided to leave UW. One decided to go into industry and the other decided to go to another academic institution. And so I decided to leave at that time. And I took a position in industry. I was hired at a company which then became part of Thermo Fisher Scientific. And I was working on developing products for researchers studying proteins. More specifically, it was researchers looking at subcellular organelle isolation, as well as protease inhibitor cocktails, phosphatase inhibitor cocktails, and anyone studying phosphorylated proteins, doing isolations surrounding those. And that was awesome. Again, I learned a ton, but it was time to move on. And I landed at the time, what was my dream job, which was early drug discovery in R&D for in vivo biology at Gilead Pharmaceuticals. I was working in their cardiovascular division. I was developing assays for screening programs to determine what compounds we wanted to further investigate for various indications, as well as developing assays for narrowing down molecules we were interested in taking into the clinic as well. And that was really an amazing time and an amazing experience. But unfortunately, as what happens oftentimes in our industry, they acquired another company focused on cardiovascular medicine, and they decided to shut the site that I was at down. And so I was very fortunate in that when I left Thermo, I left on really good terms. I had made a lot of great connections and a solid network, and I was able to utilize that network to get inroads at a different site within Thermo. The site was formerly known as Dharmacon. It was part of Thermo. It's gone through a number of acquisitions. It's now part of PerkinElmer. And so I was hired there. And again, I was in an R&D role. I was working on producing products related to those researchers studying RNAi or RNA interference, as well as developing qPCR assays. While I was there, I didn't have a very good boss. And so I decided now's the time to go back to school. I had started to be really interested in the business side of things and was interested in kind of transitioning my career away from the bench into that business side. And so I identified a program at the University of Wisconsin that would kind of fill in some of the gaps I felt that I had and give me opportunities that I felt would help me get to where I'm going or where I want to go. And so I returned to Madison and enrolled in that 2-year program. And while I was enrolled in that program, I also worked full-time running a large 30-person lab at the Department of Biomedical Engineering. We had funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop a small point-of-care nucleic acid purification device that could be utilized in under-resourced areas. So it was a really cool project, really fun, interesting times for sure to work on a project like that. And then about 3 months before I graduated, I moved to the dark side. I moved to the business side of things, and I took my first job at Promega in marketing. And my first position, I started working on our genomics portfolio products, and I was tasked with understanding the market. I was tasked with understanding how our products fit into portfolios, how researchers are utilizing our products, gaps, and products that researchers need and want, and seeing if we could work with R&D to develop those products and bring them to market to solve these researchers' problems and get them on to the next challenge that they're facing. So did that, and that leads me to my current position, where the last 3 years I've been working as a market segment manager, where I focus on the academic government market. And I have a program designed to help support early career scientists like you guys. So that, again, is my very winding road to where I got today, to where I am today. But what can you do to ensure you get to where you want to go? And the first thing I would say is, well, listening to a talk like this, or anybody talking about career options, is one way to start, because you hear the things that a lot of people don't hear. And what I mean by that is, if you recall at the beginning, I talked about those 3 paths. And then there were all these other options that most people don't talk about or think are available to them. So just knowing that there are these other options is a great way. Second thing, more important thing, is participating in a competition like Gogec. This is really going to open doors. It allows you to network. It allows you to meet some amazing people throughout the world who are doing different things and bring different things to the table. When you work in that team environment, you learn from each other. So I think that's another great opportunity. Look around your area, look to see what companies are in the area and reach out to them to do internships and job shadows. If your university has a sort of career center, oftentimes these days, because I work very closely with them for the program that I run, they're starting to do a lot of job shadow programs. See if they have job shadow programs with local companies where you can do it either on-site or virtually, and you can just spend a day with somebody learning more about what they do and how they got to where they are and such. And you can ask these questions. The biggest thing is, don't be shy, just ask questions, and then network. Start to talk to people that you know. It's kind of the people you wouldn't think that have some sort of interesting connection that can help you out. So don't shy away from, maybe somebody in a different hobby or group or club that you're a part of, or that you work with or volunteer with. They may know somebody who can connect you and help you get on that way. But the biggest thing is just ask questions. When you meet people, ask questions, show interest. I mean, you guys are doing that already. So that's pretty awesome. So with that, I am going to stop and get to the more important chunk of this hour and take your questions. What do you guys want to know? What do you guys want to learn that I can try to help you with?
Okay, yeah, if anyone has any questions, then they can either just unmute themselves and ask it, or ask it in the chat and I'll read it out.
So I actually have a one real quick. What do you think is like the biggest challenge people face when they switch from research in like an academic kind of setting, and then they go into industry, in terms of how their mind approaches solving problems, or just kind of skill set lacking, or what are some of those challenges and how people have kind of solved and planned to remediate them?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The one nice thing is it's science. That's going to be that's not going to go away. So that's the easy part. But probably the biggest difference in the thing that's hardest to get around is, in academics, your research is oftentimes for the good of science. Okay, you're making progress on something. In an industrial setting, you have a very specific target that has been communicated to you, whether that is you're going to develop a drug that will go into that we're going to take into clinical trial for X, Y, or Z, or we're going to develop a product. So you have timelines, you have different budget constraints than you do in academia. I know in academia, you're always under-resourced, you're always underfunded, and time is always an issue as well. And that translates into industry as well, but it's a little bit different and such. But timelines are very much compressed because you have a small window of time to get things out. So you learn to work very, very efficiently. You have to. The other thing is, the old school way of thinking in academics, and I know that this is still true today because my interns from the summer were talking about this. In academics, you're still kind of expected almost to live in the lab. You pretty much have a sleeping bag in the lab and you're not supposed to leave. When you work for a company, they do put some boundaries up as far as time and such, and expectations. They do set some boundaries up as well. But the other thing, as far as filling in gaps in making that transition, you're going to get that with learning. And that doesn't matter where you go. People, if you get hired in, they're going to invest the time to get you trained on different things. They're going to invest the time and the energy to get you up to speed with where you need to go. They will do that. Often it's rare. It does happen, but it's rare that you're just thrown in and told sink or swim. So you'll get a bit more training and guidance on things.
Thanks. I actually have a question too. And actually, this isn't even that relevant to me specifically, but I know a lot of the people at our event are international from lots of different countries and everything. And so at Promega, you have branch offices around the world. Is it often people that are hired locally there? And also, if they wanted to work in the US, are there specific challenges or advice you would give to someone who is like an international applicant looking to work in synthetic biology?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's an interesting question because my boss actually spent 10 years at Promega working in our UK branch. He's from the UK area. And then he left the company for a couple of years and he was just hired back he started in 2019 leading the team that I'm on, and he had to move to the US. So it is possible it's really up to the company. It's up to the company whether they're willing to help submit kind of the paperwork and the documentation and such. And companies will make it very clear, usually in a job posting, if they're kind of willing to do that, international applicants and such. But just ask. If you're not seeing it, ask a company if there's a position you're really interested in. Find somebody. HR is the best group to contact at the company and ask. Many of the companies in our industry are international and they'll have branch offices in various countries. And so, look at the postings that they have. And yeah, clearly you can kind of move in between groups and sites. We have a marketing services department within Promega. There's a gentleman who has worked in our German branch for, I don't know how many years, and he just took a position that's more of a global position. And so he's going to stay in Germany and live, but his position will be global and based out of Madison and such. So there are those types of opportunities as well.
Great. Yeah, that's really cool. I have one other question. So, I mean, regarding making connections, getting to know people, since that's obviously really important when getting into industry, where would you recommend are the best places to get to know people? Or like, let's say if someone doesn't have many connections or doesn't know many people in the industry, how could they start, like, just get their foot in the door and start meeting people for the first time?
Yeah, really good question. So probably the two easiest places are, if you're currently in academics and you're working in a lab, find out where the alumni of the lab you're in have gone. Like, that's super simple. You can find them. You already have that common ground, that common connection of the same PI and such. So that's a great place to start to talk to people. If your institution has an alumni relations department, or even the department with which you work, or you're doing your research or pursuing your degree in, oftentimes they will connect you with alumni. They have a list of alumni who are willing to network and connect with current students. And so if you reach out to them, they'll put you in touch with them. The other thing is you can go on LinkedIn. And again, institutions are the easiest way because you have that common connection if with somebody who also attended that institution. Find somebody who has the same degree as you and connect with them. Find if your institution, again, on LinkedIn, there are groups like, I'm in a group that's called Biotech Badgers. So anybody who went to UW-Madison who either works in the biotech industry or who has a degree tangentially related to that can join. Look for groups like that. That's, again, another great way to do it. And then, like I said, you have these weird, not weird, but you have these other connections that may not be obvious that can help you with networking. And that's where it comes down to talk to your friends, talk to people, you know, if you're involved in other groups, if you volunteer in the community, you have, if you're working, like when I worked as an undergrad, you know, people you meet, that's how I got into a lab. Just talk. You never know who knows somebody. So anybody you meet, talk to them.
Cool. Yeah, that's really helpful. Did anyone else have any questions, or I might have another one I can ask then?
I have another one actually. So I'm kind of currently in the spot where there's a few like older members in my lab looking to go into industry. One of the things I commonly hear them say is they'll say things about like the technical skills that seem to be in demand. So not just like the broad overall skills like communication, but like one of my lab members said like, oh, everyone seems to want people with skills with like non-model organisms. So do you think it's true that there are some kind of technical skills more in demand right now? And if so, what are some of those skills?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So there definitely will be skills in demand. Each company is going to have different skills that they're demanding because it's going to depend on their research and their projects that they're working on and such. The way to know if those technical skills are like really, really important and critical are to look at the job application itself. Oftentimes there will be, you know, just a blanket description of the position and kind of expectations, but there'll also be a section that says mandatory skills, you know, and that's typically like your education level, experience level, degrees, and it'll be some of those skills. And if it's there, it's pretty important. It doesn't mean it absolutely is crucial. And if they don't see it, they're going to put somebody out, but they're going to come right out and say, hey, yeah, this is like our perfect ideal candidate is going to have this. If there's something that's close enough by, you know, or you can make an argument like, okay, I don't really have, let's say, developmental organism, but I don't even know what to, I can't think of an example right now, but let's say you don't have that skill, but you have something else that is close to it, or you have some skill set that like, hey, I've proven I can do this, which is pretty challenging. Those are the types of things you put in your resume, you make a description, and you also, I know a lot of people, this is very old fashioned, but to me, this makes a big difference. Write a damn cover letter and submit that. And that's where you put those types of skills in there and you call that stuff out. So that's my advice is if it's not in that mandatory section, take it or leave it as far as whether they really need it. The more important thing is really they're going to want to talk to you and know you can learn, you can understand things, you can kind of be left to, you know, manage your own projects and such. Those are the types of things. Just you can demonstrate that by showing other technical skills as well.
Yeah, thank you. So were there any other questions? If not, then so asking another question about skills and what companies are looking for. So I know often in academia, there's a big focus on like publications and papers and like what journal to publish in, what's the paper like, and all that sort of stuff. In industry, I've heard that it's more focused on, like you said, skills and knowledge of techniques and everything. Is that pretty much how it is? Do companies look at what papers you published, or do they just look at what experience you have in general, or like what skills you have that you say you've demonstrated? How does that kind of work out, that balance?
It's a combination of both, to be honest. They're going to look at the skills that you say you have and such, but if you have publications, they'll be interested and they'll review and read some of those in leading into an interview, and they'll ask questions about that, and such. Number of publications, it, it is not that big of a deal in industry, because oftentimes just the general way in how most companies work, you don't publish that. Excuse me. And so that's, not such a big thing. Like if you could say, oh, I have 100 publications. Well, that's awesome, but if your name's just on it and you didn't actually do anything, that doesn't really help. So that's why it's really a combination, and the skills is the more important thing. I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman, there's a program here called Forward Bio. And I was talking to the group there, and a gentleman who was a postdoc had just accepted a position at a company in the East Coast of the United States. And he was sharing with the guy who I usually work with to coordinate some of these teaching opportunities that his interview was like, it was really weird. He's like, yeah, they kept asking me about flow cytometry and stuff. And like, I don't know a lot about it and whatever. And, he didn't think he was going to get the job. He had other skills related and that were similar. Well, all it turned out is the company wanted to gauge whether or not he could answer and fill in and demonstrate that he was interested in learning. He could troubleshoot if things came up, and that he was willing to spend the time to learn this new method and technique. And that's where some of those skills come into play. Being able to talk about what you know and demonstrate that, hey, yes, I can learn. Yes, I can problem solve. Yes, I can troubleshoot. That's going to be the more critical piece in all of that.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And now we also have a question from the chat from Pratima. She says, what kind of questions would you typically ask a CEO or founder of a company, assuming you have progressed to the next round of interviews for a senior or lead position?
So that's challenging because it depends on the position. If I were in like a lab, like an R&D type position, I would want to know, again, it depends on the size of the company. I'd want to know, if it's a small company, I'd want to know what the funding looks like. If the company is relying on funding, how stable that is. I'd want to know what the budget is. Future projections for budget, I'd want to know expectations as far as revenue as well. If it's a more established company, I'd want to know the size of my team, the budget that I have access to, and then the expected revenue growth projections. If it's more on the business side of things, I would want to, again, it's going to come down to budget, people, and understanding projections, understanding if there's a new direction the company wants to go in, what does that market look like, and the specifics surrounding that, as well as just the expectations for growth. Those are some of the more like non-traditional questions that I would want to make sure that I had answers to when I got to that round if I was meeting with them.
Okay, interesting. Did anyone else in the chat have any questions? Pratima says, thank you. Then, so I guess also speaking of like smaller companies and stuff like that, um, I guess a lot of your advice probably applies mainly to larger biotech companies. Do you know, is it distinctly different if you're looking at like startups or like much smaller or newer companies? Would any of your advice be different for those?
The only advice that would be different for really a startup and smaller companies is you have to be willing to wear multiple hats and be willing to do different things, because they are going to be extremely lean when it comes to the people resource. And so you may be tasked, you may be hired into one department. Like let's say you're hired into R&D. You may have to go in and do some operational things from time to time just because they need help getting product out the door. I've heard, this is a story from the biotech community around here, where there was one company when it got started, a woman in finance. She might have been just an accountant at the time. She worked her way up to CFO over the long term. They needed help, like pouring plates. They were doing a lot of cloning, so they needed help pouring agar plates and like dishwashing. And so she learned how to pour agar plates, and she would come in and wash dishes. And there were times where she had to go and pipette various things for operations to get kits out the door. So, as long as you're open-minded and cool with that, that's the biggest thing, is be prepared. If you're like, no, I'm not okay with that, be upfront with people right away, because that is kind of the expectation, is that you just kind of got to do it whatever you're asked. So that's the only thing, is just know that there may be more expected of you at those smaller companies beyond what you just see in a job description. But that would be the only difference, I would say.
Would that also apply in terms of working hours and stuff? Because you mentioned that, like, as opposed to academia, it's very like, 9 to 5 and everything. You have your set defined limits. Would you say that it's similar in startups, or do startups lean more like academia, where you kind of sleep in lab and everything? Or do you know?
Most startups, I mean, there are some where, again, just like in academia, you have people who are super passionate and super driven, and that's what they want to do. Like, they want to sleep in the lab, they want to sleep in the office and be there for their experiments. And so those people will do that. But that is not the expectation. The expectation is more like, you work, these are your working hours, so to speak, but you know what? This is a high priority for the company. You need to drop whatever you're doing and come help do this. That's more of the expectation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So now there's a couple questions in the chat. One is, are larger companies more willing to accept international applicants for R&D positions?
I don't know. I mean, they have more resources to help, but I don't know. Each company is so different. That's why it's very hard to give a very concrete answer with that. It's just going to be very company dependent, but they definitely have more resources available to kind of go through and work through the process involved. But I can't say with 100% certainty yes or no. I'm sorry, I wish
Okay.
I could.
Yeah, that's fine. And then another question from the chat is, most of the undergraduates that I work with are terrified about the idea of approaching industry for a job, even if the position is open, because of the uncertainty of the hiring process. Can you share with us your experience in the interview process and the hopes you needed to jump through to be in the position you are right now?
Yes. So first of all, shameless plug right now. What I didn't talk about, because of my whole slide kerfuffle, is we have built at Promega, as part of this program that I run for you guys, we've built an entire web page for you guys called the Student Resource Center. It's free. It's got tons of technical information on how to do things, how to troubleshoot stuff from a technical standpoint. And we're always adding more, but we also have an entire section on professional growth and development, which goes through things like resume writing, interviewing. And this is my super shameless plug. We just posted a white paper from 2 of my summer interns this past year, and it touches on some of those topics. Now, what they went through for an internship is slightly different, but not all that different than undergrads who would be approaching their very first job in industry. The main things that are going to happen are, one, somebody will have to fill in an application. Okay, you're going to have to submit the application however the company wants it. It's going to be online. Just follow, whatever their instructions are. Before you submit your application, make sure you have proofread your resume and your cover letter, because anytime there are small errors that pop up, that's kind of a red flag to a hiring manager. I mean, sure, things slip through, but it is kind of a red flag that, oh, maybe they don't care about this that much. So that's first step. You submit your application. All right, so let's say you got your application in. Say I'm reviewing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, this person sounds awesome. Let's get them into the next step. The next step is typically the HR department will do a phone screen. And what this consists of is typically a human resource manager or a recruiter will contact you for just like a very short 15-minute conversation. Basically, they just make sure that, yes, you are still interested and available for the position. You are able to work. They confirm some of your information. There may be questions that I ask as like screen questions to see if you're the right fit, and then they give you an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So let's say that goes really well. On to the next step. Next step consists of a discussion with me. It would be like a 30-minute discussion. I go through questions, kind of asking whatever I need to ask, like why are you interested in this position? What makes you stand out from somebody else? What do you, if it's an internship position, what do you want to get out of this position, this internship? Give you time to ask questions. Let's say you're rocking it. Then the last phase is you meet with others, and that could be other people from the team that you would be working with. It could be from other departments that you would be interacting with. And typically for a full-time position, that is going to be probably a full day interview that you'll go through. And it's really hard right now because so many of these are virtual. It just, they're so painful for everyone. But that's typically the process that takes place. And then you would either hear back and get the good news or move on. And what I also want to share, and to really keep in mind that I can't emphasize enough, is when people are going through the interview process, it's not just about the company interviewing you to see if you're the right fit for the company. You need to make sure that the company is a right fit for you and the people you'll be working with in the position and such. So keep that in mind. Ask really hard questions to make sure that it is a good fit, because it really stinks when somebody gets hired and 6-12 months in, it's just not a good fit from both perspectives. That stinks, because whatever happens, somebody leaves, whether they're asked to leave or they leave on their own, and then the hiring manager has to start the process all over again. So really ask critical questions to make sure that it is a good fit.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your time. I think we're approaching the end of the hour, but that was really insightful, and we really appreciated all of your advice, even with all the technical difficulties. It was really great hearing about your pathway and experience, and then also answering our questions. Yeah.
No, thank you for the opportunity. What I will do is I will share my email address. Feel free, anybody, if we didn't get to questions, if you have questions later, please feel free to reach out, contact me. I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. And such, really enjoyed this opportunity. And I'll also share the slides, which has other information on and other resources and such designed for you guys. But thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Good luck and enjoy the rest of the competition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.